And now it's time for another Dice Tower review with Mike Vincent.
Okay, so finally we're going to look at the new enemies for the first Nightmare deck, passes through Mirkwood, and here we have the Ungoliant's Brood. They have a threat of 31, 2 threat, 3 attack, 2 defense, and 5 hit points. It's a creature and a spider, and reads Forced. After you engage Ungoliant's Brood, your cards cannot ready for the remainder of the round. So if you're counting on using cards like Fast Hitch or Unexpected Courage, then if you're engaged with Ungoliant's Brood, then you're not going to be able to use those cards. Now this card also has a pretty brutal shadow effect. If this attack is undefended, exhaust all characters you control. So you're really going to want to think twice about taking undefended attacks in this game because of this card. Having to exhaust all characters could be a really good way to die if you're engaged with quite a few enemies. So you're either going to want to bring along some shadow card cancellation effects, perhaps a Burning Brand, or maybe Balin as a hero. But yeah, you're going to want to be careful of this one. So I want to take a look at location, which is a bit of a nasty little combo that happens with one of the locations we talked about earlier. So the Ungoliant's Brood does combo with the Glade of the Spawn. So if the Glade of the Spawn is your active location, the Ungoliant's Brood comes into play and is a spider. Then after a spider enemy enters play, each player must choose and exhaust one character he controls. So if you're counting on using a readying effect like Fast Hitch or Unexpected Courage, then you won't be able to do that if you have to engage the Ungoliant's Brood, or if you're already engaged with the Ungoliant's Brood. So we start to see some of these little combos. There's quite a few spiders in this deck, and there's certainly a theme in this quest of having to exhaust characters. So you're really going to want to load up on any sort of readying effects, because you're going to find with the King Spider as well that when he will also force you to exhaust characters. So my wife and I definitely found when we were playing through this, there's lots of instances where you have to exhaust. So bring along those Hobbits and Fast Hitch, and make sure you have Unexpected Courage in your deck. Yay, even more spiders. Here we see the Spiders of Mirkwood. They have a starting threat of 18. They have 3 threat, 2 attack, 2 defense, and 4 hit points. This is a spider, of course, and reads, while it is engaged with you, Spiders of Mirkwood gets +1 attack for each exhausted character you control. So once again, we see this theme of cards punishing you and exhausting you, and make it even worse when you are exhausted. The shadow effect is also somewhat similar, as if you draw this for a shadow effect, it says choose and exhaust one character you control. If this attack was undefended, also deal that character 2 damage. So we see more spiders. If you are playing a Hobbit deck and you are hoping to have Fast Hitch, you're probably not going to benefit from the effects you're going to have from engaging an enemy with a higher threat. Because this one has a fairly low engagement cost of 18, chances are some of those really nice Hobbit effects aren't going to pay off here. So not too bad in its stats. 2 attack and 2 defense is pretty harmless. But if you'll notice, there are a lot of cards forcing you to exhaust, so there's certainly a chance the Spiders of Mirkwood will end up with more attack than 2. Not too bad to deal with, though. Again, you're probably going to want to bring along some cards for canceling shadow effects. A Burning Brand would be certainly one to consider. But yeah, for an attack of 2 with extra attacks on top of it with exhausted characters, you're really going to want to be able to bring along readying effects as much as possible. So there's the Spiders of Mirkwood, and there are 2 copies of this guy. Okay, the next new enemy we see is Forest Flies, and there are 3 copies of this in the Nightmare deck. It has an engagement cost of 27, a threat of 4, which is very high, 1 attack, 0 defense, and 3 hit points. This is a creature and an insect, and reads Forced. After you engage Forest Flies, deal 1 damage to each exhausted character you control. So again, we see this recurring theme of punishing effects towards exhausted characters. Now there's a couple ways you can deal with this. Perhaps you can attack the Forest Flies in the staging area. One thing I had in this quest was a lot of direct damage. So if you have Fallon or Hands Upon the Bow or the Great Yew Bow, or Done Here, or any way to attack the staging area, there's one way you can kind of get around having to deal damage to exhausted characters. Because it has 0 defense and 3 hit points, you're probably going to be able to kill this in 1 hit in the staging area. Now if you do have to engage this guy, you want to again, probably sound like a broken record here, bring readying effects. so that you don't have too many exhausted characters. Certainly 1 damage is something you can deal with, particularly if you are using healing. And the shadow effect of this guy is if attacking enemy is an insect, deal it 2 additional shadow cards. So that's pretty brutal, because if you do have an insect, like of course forest flies, then having 2 more shadow cards on top of that. So again, you're going to want to bring along some cards for canceling shadow effects, because there's some nasty ones. Otherwise, this guy's not too bad. The 4th threat in the staging area is certainly a pain and has a fairly low engagement at 27. So you're probably going to have to engage these guys unless you have a way to deal with them in the staging area. Nice thing about them though, 0 defense and 3 hit points means they're pretty easy to kill. So there you have Forest Flies. Okay, so here we have the final card, the final nightmare card, sort of the big boss for this encounter, and that is the Ungoliant's Spawn. Has an engagement of 32, has 3 threat, 5 attack, 3 defense, and a nasty 9 hit points. It is of course a creature and a spider, and reads, when revealed, until the end of the phase, each character currently committed to the quest gets -2 willpower and is discarded if its willpower is 0. So this could be a very devastating effect, particularly for allies who probably aren't going to have willpower above 2. Of course, some will, but many will not. You even have to be careful with some of your heroes here. So if you're expecting the Ungoliant Spawn, having a test of will, cancel when revealed, is certainly something you're going to want to consider. Or you're going to want to ensure that you are questing with characters with a very high willpower. So at least 3, and someone like Eowyn, of course, having 4. So yeah, -2 willpower is not fun. So if you can cancel this as a when revealed, or be very careful about who you are questing with for their willpower. So also, you need to consider the shadow effect. It says raise defending player's threat by 5. Bad, but not too bad. However, raise defending player's threat by 10 instead if undefended. So again, we see you're going to want to be careful and have to think twice about taking attacks undefended, unless you have a means of canceling shadow effects. So otherwise, this is a guy you're going to have to bat away at for quite a few turns with 3 defense and 9 hit points. He's not going to go down easy. So you may want to consider someone like Gimli, who can, power up as an attacker. Perhaps you want to use the Black Arrow and Legolas, and perhaps something having the Rivendell Blade to lower his defense. But certainly one you can pick away at and kill, but you're not going to want to have this guy hang around for too long. Although with an attack of 5, if you have someone like Baragon and a Gondorian shield, you'll be able to block him over and over again, and if you can deal with the shadow effects, he's not too bad. But certainly, I think his when revealed effect is the most devastating, as this could certainly kill off some of your allies and maybe some of your heroes. So there we go. That's the final enemy, the Ungoliant Spawn. So let's take a look at some cards that I would recommend bringing along for this quest. Okay, so the theme of this quest is certainly exhausting your characters and trying to do nasty things to them while they're exhausted. So some cards to consider. Sam Gamgee, of course, will ready when he engages an enemy with a higher engagement cost. He might be one to consider. Aragorn, of course, you can spend a resource after he's committed to a quest to ready him. Prince Imrahil as well, after a character leaves play, ready Prince Imrahil. So those are 3 heroes you may want to consider. Interestingly, all from leadership, as that seems to be something they specialize in. As an ally, if you're playing Spirit, the Westfold Horsebreaker, you can discard him to choose and ready a hero. So that is something that will allow you to ready. And of course, if you're playing Hobbits, Fast Hitch is a no-brainer. All you have to do is exhaust Fast Hitch to ready attached character. A new card, Steed of the Mark, is a mount and can be used on a Gondor or Rohan hero. So after attached hero commits to a quest, you can spend a resource from attached hero's resource pool to ready attached hero, essentially giving them leadership Aragorn's ability. And of course, if you're playing Spirit, Unexpected Courage, exhaust Unexpected Courage to ready attached hero. So these are all cards you may want to consider bringing along, because the theme of this is exhausting your characters, and so if you can ready them, that's going to make it a lot easier. Okay, and here's just a few other cards you may want to consider bringing along as well to make your job a little easier. Eowyn may be a good hero to consider, as she's very good at questing with 4 willpower, and she will be able to she won't be susceptible to the Ungoliant Spawn's when revealed effect of lowering and destroying anyone who ends up having 0 willpower. So she's okay with that, having 4. A Burning Brand is a great card to bring along if you're playing lore to just stop those really nasty shadow cards, of which there are many, and many that are punishing. The Warden of Healing, I think, is really good to bring along. You're probably going to want to have some healing just because there's quite a few spiders, spider enemies, and cards that deal damage over time, like the Spider's Web as a condition attachment. Speaking of condition attachments, the Miner of the Iron Hills is a good one to bring along, as he's really one of the only cards that can get rid of a condition attachment. So I think, if you're playing lore, he is a good one to consider. And most of you are going to bring these cards along anyways if you're playing Spirit. It almost goes without saying, but a Test of Will to cancel when revealed effects and Hasty Stroke to cancel shadow effects are certainly worth bringing. So my wife and I did use all 4 spheres for this quest. I think having some tactics to deal with the enemies, we've already mentioned the many lore cards that come in handy. A lot of the leadership are able to ready, and Spirit, of course, for canceling when revealed, canceling shadow effects, and then being able to quest effectively. So yeah, keep in mind there are many cards I'm sure that will be useful for this quest. Obviously I don't have time to deal with all of them, but I think these cards I've highlighted here are ones that will help you out on this quest. So thanks very much for watching. Once again, I want to wish everyone a Happy New Year. I'm excited to be back making videos, and the next Nightmare deck we're going to look will be a Journey Along the Anduin. Of course, I will also continue looking at the other expansions and adventure packs and doing reviews for those as well. So happy 2014, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at DicetowerNetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.